You're clearing your throat. It makes me have to clear mine.
Yeah. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Naveed Shah. I'm an Army veteran and the political director of Common Defense. We're a grassroots veterans organization. I'm based here in Washington, D.C., and I'm really excited to be joined today by Representative Chris Deluzio of Pennsylvania. Chris is a Navy veteran, Naval Academy graduate, and a freshman congressman from the Pittsburgh area. Really excited to have him on and talk about this really well. I wish there were better things we could talk about. For today, we're talking about the GOP debt default bill that they passed yesterday, which is just a horrendous crime that they did, and it really damages a lot of different people from across the spectrum. But today we're going to be talking about how it affects veterans specifically and military families. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to you, Chris, to take it away.
Hey, Naveed, thanks. Thanks, folks, for coming on, and certainly Common Defense for letting me join you guys today and give you a little bit of a glimpse into what Kevin McCarthy and the House Republicans did, how it affects all of us as veterans, and not just us. Plenty of people are going to suffer because of this bill. So I'll tell you, and Naveed mentioned a little bit about my background. I'm a veteran as well. Navy guy, Naval Academy grad. I served at sea. I served in Iraq. I used the VA. I'm proud to be a patient of the VA and use and go to the VA for my health care. I'm going to describe what this bill is. I want to talk about how it's going to impact us, or could, and then sort of take it from there. So this bill is essentially the Republicans holding the American economy hostage. They are saying that they will force us into default by refusing to raise the debt ceiling for spending and tax cuts and things that have already passed through the Congress, including the massive tax cuts they jammed through under Donald Trump as president. If we don't agree to these massive cuts, then they're going to wreck the American economy. They're going to push us into default, which would be catastrophic for this country. That's the basic framework, the posture here, which I think is important. Right? That's what we have to remember about where we are. So what the heck does this bill do? They passed it through the House last night. Only Republican votes. In fact, they lost, I think, 4 Republicans who wouldn't vote for it. And the bill will have just a massive impact on all of us as veterans and our care at the VA. So this bill cuts all discretionary spending, everything other than, really defense and some other things, but all discretionary spending. There's not a single carve out or protection for the VA or for veterans, nothing in the bill. And so, we calculate this of what is the impact at VA? What is the impact on veterans? Well, I will tell you, 30 million fewer outpatient visits in the VA. In Pennsylvania, it's more than 1.1 million fewer visits we'll see for veterans in the VA. North of 80,000 jobs in the Veterans Health Administration. Those are VA jobs, people who care for all of us who use the VA. It's going to mean the claims backlog will get longer. It's going to take longer to have disability claims resolved. That part of it alone, as we're talking about implementation of the PACT Act, and so many of us who served in the years after 9/11, exposed to toxic substances, are now newly eligible or coming in or filing claims. Well, it's the worst possible time you could do something that hurts the pace of resolving these claims, I think. It's going to prevent construction on healthcare facilities that veterans need. I think the calculation is north of $500 million for major construction projects would be on the chopping block if it's this 22% cut across the board. Housing is the ways that the VA helps on housing. This will be a cut then to the housing choice vouchers. Something like 50,000 veterans rely on those. Going to put people at greater risk of losing their home. Food insecurity. It's not just in the VA, right? About 1.3 million veterans rely on SNAP. Same thing. These cuts apply across the board to anything in the discretionary budget. It's going to mean more people are at risk of going hungry. Look, mental health services, substance use health services, you name it. Look at Department of Health and Human Services, mental health centers, mental health and substance use prevention grants, other public health programs. These are all things in the discretionary budget this bill takes a whack at, a massive whack at. And I think what you heard and saw in the vote, with all Democrats being against it and a handful of Republicans, that this bill is a pretty clear betrayal of the obligation that this country has to anyone who served, whether you've served in peace, whether you served at war, whether you're deployed, whether you're a stateside. I always say to folks, if you raised your right hand, you signed a blank check. Whatever the country asked you to do, you were ultimately willing to do what was necessary to serve this country, to protect this country. And that with it comes the sacred obligation we in this government have to care for all of us. It's a bond. And I think this threat to cut this bill that does nothing to protect veterans is a betrayal of that. Now, you can say, hey, this guy's a Democratic member of Congress. I don't care. I'm a Republican. That's fine. The veteran service organizations who pay attention to this are also really mad. Common Defense, of course, is a group, and you guys all know that this bill is a problem. There are more than 20 groups who have joined on with you guys to raise the alarm about this terrible bill, from IAVA, the Disabled American Veterans, to Minority Veterans of America. VFW has their own letter expressing grave concerns around the idea of doing anything to cut and not protect veterans' care and spending on the VA in the bill the Republicans just passed. And look, for me, and I'm sure many of you feel this anger of, oftentimes we as veterans were used as props by right-wing politicians. They put us in their ads. They have us on their websites. They have us in their mailers. They wrap themselves in the flag. Well, guess what? You don't get to turn your backs on veterans and claim the mantle of patriotism, that you are the only ones who love this country. That's a bullshit move in my mind. And I think more and more veterans understand that we're not going to be used as props for political purposes by people who won't protect and stand up for our VA and our care. And again, the context here is the Republicans are saying, if you don't agree to these massive cuts across the government, we're going to tank the economy. And you know, when they talk about the budget, it's always cuts, 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 spending. You know what they don't talk about? The protection of tax cuts for the biggest corporations and the richest people in this country and the richest people in the history of the planet. They don't want to talk about the revenue side. The same people who jam through huge tax cuts, again, for the richest, most powerful people and corporations in this country under Donald Trump. So when I hear this fiscal responsibility talk, they can miss me with it because it ignores the way they are there always to hand out tax cuts to the richest people in this country. And when I hear the talk of how much they love this country, they can miss me with that too, when they're sitting here turning their backs on my fellow veterans. You know, and these cuts are going to hurt every region in this country. I look at my district and, you know, I have tons of folks who use the VA. We have people, more than 250,000 folks who either get coverage through the VA, Medicare or Medicaid. You know, there are homeowners who are going to see costs go up on mortgage payments if we were to default, new car payments, all the ways you would measure things that would hurt our economy if we breach the debt limit and put us into default. And again, this is something that the Congress has repeatedly done. And just to remind folks, this is spending and it's revenue levels. So taxing and spending. These things have been passed and approved by Congresses in years past. All that's due now is the bill for the Treasury to issue debt based on prior budgets I've never voted on. But because Kevin McCarthy and the House Republicans control the House, they're willing to hold the economy hostage to jam through cuts to hurt a lot of people, including my fellow veterans. And so I come back to a simple lesson I learned in uniform that I'm sure many of you did, that I learned fighting for a union with the steelworkers at Pitt. It's solidarity, right? That we all stand together and we're strongest together. And I cannot imagine anything more opposite than solidarity than this. This is breaking faith with all of us, all of you who have served. I'm going to fight it. I think and understand this bill is dead on arrival in the Senate, which makes it even less of a serious thing to do because it now makes it even more likely that this country might go into default because of the House Republicans' unseriousness and unwillingness to govern. But I'm going to continue to fight. I know you guys will. We need you in the fight, mobilizing your friends, your neighbors of whatever political persuasion. Let me be clear about that. This is not a Democratic or Republican problem to worry about losing your veterans' health care. It is a problem that affects all of us. So get your friends fired up. Know that you got allies here in Washington. I'm among them. Naveed, I'll flip it back to you, but thanks for giving me a chance to talk a bit today and for standing with you guys in solidarity here.
Thanks very much again, Chris, for being here. And you're absolutely right. This is not a Democratic or Republican issue. This is actually, in fact, an issue that is hurting people across the spectrum. And it's not even just a veterans issue. Like, we talked a lot about how this is affecting veterans right now, but this also is, going directly after programs in other departments of the government that veterans rely on. Like, there are going to be deep cuts to the Department of Health and Human Services, which provides mental health centers, substance use treatment, and other public health programs, right? Because there's lots of veterans who aren't eligible for VA healthcare who rely on those services. Same thing with the Department of Labor. If they cut the Department of Labor's homeless veterans reintegration program, 50,000 veterans who need those services and rely on them and otherwise are living on the streets are going to be affected. So when we talk about these cuts and how they're affecting veterans, that's just one small piece of the bigger puzzle and how it's affecting everybody.
Well, Naveed, I'll add this too. And I didn't say it here. I represent Western Pennsylvania. When the East Palestine derailment happened, my constituents in Beaver County were within the evacuation zone. Were hurt by that, and plenty of folks live near tracks. Well, guess what else gets cut here? Rail safety inspections. This will hurt people in so many ways, and it is just a fundamentally unserious maneuver. It shows, I think, all of us what Republicans care about, and it is screwing over basically all of us to make sure they can protect keeping taxes historically low for the most powerful people and companies in this country. That's what they're about, and I think we're seeing it in plain sight right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, this happening right now in such an unserious way, knowing that it's not going to pass in the Senate, and knowing that President Biden has been pushing this whole time to say that the debt ceiling and the budget should not be conflated. No other in our history, even President Trump, even President Reagan said we need to pass the debt ceiling. There's no debate about this. And for now, Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans to mix these things together and try to do this maneuver is dangerous for our country, for our economy, for everybody. With that, I'm going to go ahead and see if we can bring in our next guest, a Common Defense member, Jessica Motzinger. I was hoping to see if Representative Deluzio could stick around for a minute, but let's see if Jessica's here. There you go. All right.
Hello. Thank you for having me here.
Jessica, thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how these cuts might affect you.
Yes, thank you for having me here. Again, my name is Jessica Motzinger, and I am actually a multi-generation military family member, and I ended up joining the Navy. I served about 8 years, met my husband there. I became permanently disabled, and I actually am on Social Security disability insurance. That's one way I'm going to be impacted. My husband retired in 2018. He is a disabled veteran. Both of us have been exposed to the toxic substances that they just started recognizing with the PACT Act, myself including Camp Lejeune toxic water and everything. Myself and hundreds of thousands of people are going to be affected. This is a life or death issue for many of us because we depend on our earned benefits to help pay for groceries, lights, just even getting to medical care. I require doctor appointments multiple times a month. My husband, he's in medical care now for some of the issues that came about from the toxic exposure while he was in Afghanistan and Iraq. So we are definitely going to be affected in a negative way if this Republican budget goes through.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jessica. And again, really appreciate you joining us for this. And Representative Deluzio, really appreciate you joining us for this as well. This is an important issue. Again, not just how it affects our veterans community and our military community, but as a whole, it affects the fabric of America. If you have any closing remarks before you have to go, please feel free.
Well, look, I appreciate you guys sharing some time with me, and know that you've got allies in Washington, but I think the key takeaway here is this is something we got to continue to fight on. This is not the end of this. Something passing through the House does not resolve this debt ceiling crisis, does not resolve the risk of pushing this country into default, which Kevin McCarthy and the House Republicans seem willing to do. to do perhaps on the backs of so many of us as veterans. So I think my message would be to keep fighting, keep mobilizing, keep agitating, be ready to stand up against attacks on all of us as veterans, and know that you'll have some friends here in Washington like me and plenty of others ready to stand with you.
Amazing. Thank you so much again for being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And I think next up, we have another Common Defense member and veteran joining us. I believe it's going to be Moises Montevello, if he is ready.
Hey, how's it going, Naveed?
Hey, Moises, how are you?
Good. Happy to hear what Representative Deluzio had to say. It's nice to know that we have an ally up at the Capitol working for us and who understands us.
Yeah, so Moises, tell us a little bit about yourself and how the potential budget cuts would affect you.
Sure. So I'm Moises Montalvo. I'm a United States Army veteran. I have skin cancer, I have PTSD, and I have an autoimmune disorder, which are connected to the PACT Act, to toxins. So specifically, this is going to impact me personally as I seek care for my skin cancer, as I seek care for my immune issues. These budget cuts are going to directly impact me. But more than that, as you know, Naveed, I just got back from a 3-week bus tour with Courage for America, where we traveled across the country talking to regular Americans about this exact same issue and calling on members of the GOP to not make these extreme cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. And you know what we heard? Most people didn't know it was happening. Most people were shocked. They were appalled. Every veteran we spoke to said it was a slap in the face. It was, how could they? How could they cut these benefits that we depend on, that we rely on? For me personally, my family depends on these. My dad, who's also a veteran, takes care of my mother with dementia full time. My sister, who had a debilitating stroke in her 20s, also lives at home with mom and dad. I don't know where they'd be without these programs. I don't know where they'd be without Medicare and Medicaid paying my mom's medical bills. So like Representative Deluzio said, this is about so much more than just veterans benefits, than just us. And I think that's one of the reasons I feel so strongly about it, is because it's going to affect these people that we all raised our hand and said we would swear to protect. So that continues to this, in my opinion. I'm here to protect them. I'm here to protect their benefits and to make sure that those Americans get what they need.
Absolutely. That's all we're trying to do, Moises. You're absolutely right. This is a real dangerous precedent that they've set. It shows how grossly out of touch the Republicans are with the reality of everyday Americans. They don't know what a gallon of gas costs or a gallon of milk costs. They don't know of the price of eggs, right? They think that the minimum wage, which hasn't changed in 14 years, is good enough, while regular people are struggling every day. And it really shows, just again, how out of touch they really are. Things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and veterans benefits provide a vital safety net. In the greatest, wealthiest country in the world, we should be able to provide for our hardworking citizens so they can live with basic dignity and respect. We're asking our politicians, our elected officials, to make a simple promise to protect our hard-earned benefits. Earned benefits, I say, because these are not handouts. Everyone has to work to pay into Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Veterans risk their lives to sacrifice their youth and their health in service to our country, like I did when I deployed to Iraq. And veterans benefits are more like workers' compensation, which we earned the day I raised my right hand, swore an oath, and signed a check payable to the United States of America for any amount up to and including my life. In exchange, we were trained and deployed to the furthest corners of the globe to fight, bleed, and die in the name of freedom, democracy, and the American way of life. certainly veterans are compensated during our service, and we earn skills and have fringe benefits, but none of those things matter if you're injured on the job, if you have a severe illness, or if you die during your service to the military. Because whether you're a veteran, a factory worker, a nurse, a farm worker, or a teacher, everyone contributes to the fabric of the American way of life. And our elected leaders need to protect the benefits which make it livable for the least among us. Thanks again for being here, Moises. I want to introduce our next panelist, who's also a veteran. Bryson, I think, is coming up.
Hello, thank you for having me. So my name's Bryson Ripley. I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps as a corrections specialist. That's basically a prison guard that I got to do that 5 years. You can fill in the blank for the kinds of issues that I experience now, the kinds of things I need the VA for. The biggest one for me being PTSD. Now I'm going to college. I'm pursuing a degree in sociology. I'm using my benefits for that school. And the biggest thing for me is I'd love to focus all of my time on college. I'd love to focus all my time into getting an education, but I can't. Some of that time has to be used because of the fact some politicians don't have my best interest in mind. I deal with those issues that I have through the VA healthcare system. Veterans already have to wait significant amounts of time going to the VA for treatment for PTSD. I had to wait months to get an appointment, and that's at one of the better VAs in the country, being that not every VA in the country is created equally. They're cutting staff, and I that is what's contributing to these wait times. So cutting staff is going to directly hurt veterans. I think the biggest thing is maybe we should be working on fixing the corruption in our country. Do we want to be an oligarchy where all the politicians are listening to the people at the top instead of the people they're supposed to be representing, or do we want to be a democracy? Maybe we should look at before taking benefits away from veterans. Maybe we should look at auditing the DoD, figuring out where we're wasting money. Maybe we should figure out what's going on with our mining laws, preventing corporations, foreign countries from taking advantage of American resources. Maybe we should look at our tax code. Maybe everyone should be paying their fair share. Maybe we should look at our justice system and actually prosecute white collar crime, which takes a lot of money away from these kinds of programs. Maybe we should be looking at wage theft so that everyone doesn't have to be on welfare benefits. Cutting benefits instead of going after these easy fixes, it's just wrong. We should be looking at the way these corrupt individuals are taking away our benefits, and I think being here and talking about these things is definitely a step in the right direction.
Thanks so much, Bryson. Thanks again to everybody for being here. I think the message overall that we want to make sure we send is that these cuts are not just impacting veterans. They are certainly impacting veterans, but it's not just us. This is a small sample of what the impact is going to be across the board, and this would again be happening at a time when the VA is supposed to be implementing the PACT Act, the Honoring Our PACT Act, which was passed last year, not even a year ago, which, by the way, the Republicans tried to torpedo when that was going through as well. And so before we even had a chance to take advantage of the benefits that the PACT Act has offered, the Republicans have turned around and want to make huge cuts to it again. So we really need to make sure that we hold them accountable and keep a close eye on this. If you're a veteran, please visit commondefense.us/membership to sign up. Join us here at Common Defense to keep fighting the good fight. Thank you all.